Former Empire star Jussie Smollett was convicted of lying to police. Prosecutors are looking ahead to sentencing. Smollett's attorneys, however, are promising the actor will be vindicated in a court of appeals. A jury in Chicago found Smollett guilty on 5 of 6 counts of disorderly conduct. In the end, a special prosecutor was successful in convincing them that Smollett staged a hoax hate crime back in January of 2019. BNC's Derek Lewis is in Chicago, where some people feel justice was served, while others still aren't sure.
Jussie Smollett has been found guilty for lying to police about being the victim of a hate crime back in 2019 here in Chicago. Now, this case has gotten attention beyond Chicago, in the country and even around the world. Now, we know people become victims of hate crimes because of how they identify themselves. So we stopped here in Boys Town, a gay neighborhood in Chicago, to get reaction on the verdict from people who identify as black and gay and whether or not they support Jussie.
I wish he would wish the whole thing wouldn't happen in the first place, because, like, you know, stuff like that does still happen, especially in the black community. I just hope he learned his lesson from it and hope he grows from it.
What impact do you think it's going to have on the black gay community when it comes to reporting hate crimes?
The same as it's always been, absolutely nothing. You know, bias against us all around, just that simple.
This whole time, Jussie has maintained his innocence and plans to appeal this conviction. In Chicago, I'm Derek Lewis for BNC.
Back with me to talk about the impact of this verdict and decisions still to be made, BNC legal contributor Paul Henderson and criminal defense attorney Brian Watkins. Gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us. First, let's start with you, Brian, to react to some of what we heard in Derek's piece. People in Chicago and likely across the country having mixed reactions to the verdict. What's the broader cultural impact here? Brian, you first.
You know, I don't know if there is one. I mean, the bottom line is he lied. Why did he do it? Well, we're in a society where victims become heroes, and I think that's what he was seeking. The problem is that his cohorts, his partners in crime, basically ratted him out and said, yeah, we did this. And it's bad, and it should negatively affect the black gay community, because you don't want to be crying wolf when there are actual real hate crimes going on out there. And so he actually takes away from that. You know, he actually damages the black gay community by doing these fake, you know, I'm a victim type of scams. You know, I know their lawyers are saying they're going to appeal. There's no legal issues here upon which to appeal. And you can't just appeal because you didn't like the verdict. So I think Jussie's going to have to, you know, take his comeuppance, and that's going to be that.
Paul, there's Jussie had an impact on Hollywood, right? Young, gay, black man getting these great roles. So what are your thoughts about the verdict?
Well, I think the verdict is important, and that we got to address and unpack a lot of these issues. Hate crimes are really important, and the fact that we're having a public and national conversation about it only validates again and hopefully encourages more people to come forward. You know, I've been the head of the hate crimes unit here twice while I was a prosecutor. I think it's really important that people understand the message that if something happens to you, that you can go to the police. I'm hoping that some of the takeaway and the ancillary benefit of this trial is understanding and showing that this law enforcement agency spent over 3,000 hours investigating a hate crime allegation that was made. And hopefully that wasn't just tied to him because he was a celebrity. I think ultimately the celebrity nature of him, his in the courtroom hurt him. Clearly, the jury didn't believe what he had to say or believe his narrative, and he's been found guilty now. I don't believe that the appeal that he has will be successful, but to me, the bigger issue that we should be looking at in terms of waiting for that next shoe to drop, aside from the sentencing and whatever that should be, whatever that will be the civil liability that he is instantly exposed to for those 3,000 hours from that department, that they can now come back based on this guilty plea and have a very easy civil lawsuit against him for that time that was wasted for his allegation.
I want to get to that resource question about time and money wasted in just a moment, but let me play some sound for you here because let's wrap this up about this appeal idea. Right? He's found guilty. His attorney says he's certain the actor will win his appeal. Here's his reasoning.
The verdict is inconsistent. You cannot say Jussie is lying and Jussie is not lying for the same exact incidents. So we feel 100% confident that this case will be won on appeal.
Brian, does Jussie Smollett have grounds for an appeal?
No, what his lawyer was saying is absolutely wrong. Juries do have the right to say, you lied about this and you didn't lie about that. That's what juries do. They splice through, they determine, what's real, what's not real, who's lying, who's not lying, whether or not the prosecution met their burden. Prosecution met their burden on 5 of the 6 counts. The fact that they found him not guilty on 1 count bolsters that fact, because the jury was able to dissect the evidence and say, yeah, well, you're not guilty here, but you're guilty here. And a verdict like that is never going to be overturned.
Paul, back to that resource question then, right? As we look at sentencing being the next phase, date hasn't been set, you're looking at a penalty of about 3 years. Most people, though, believe that Jussie will probably get probation, community service. He doesn't have any priors. But in the press conference after the verdict, the special prosecutor said he plans to bring up one specific issue: the fact that he believes Smollett spent hours lying on the stand. Is that going to change what kind of sentence Jussie gets?
Oh, well, it could. It's certainly clear what the prosecution is going to argue. And he was on the stand for quite a long time. He was on the stand for over 6 hours, and he gave us lots of information that was both salacious and apparently, according to this jury, not true. Not the least of which, I remember at one point he was talking about part of what he paid money for was the training, the protection, and then the secret weight loss diet from Nigeria that I was quite frankly waiting to hear what that was. I want to know and hear what it is. That might have been what the jury didn't believe, the linchpin from them making part of their decision. But what's going to happen now is the standard by that appeal is if there was any reasonable basis for them to get to that guilty verdict based on the testimony, and there certainly was. So I don't think the appeal is going to go anywhere. The argument that's going to be made from prosecution about custody, because he's already out of custody, so it's a big deal for him to come back into custody, is going to be based on the perjury allegation and how much time and energy that the defendant spent in concocting the story and trying to sell it to the jury that they didn't believe. And for that basis, to elevate the sentence into a custodial sentence. That's the argument that we can expect.
Well, and here's the argument that I think we can all settle here, is that unclear who actually benefited from all of this. Resources wasted all around. BNC legal contributor Paul Henderson, criminal defense attorney Brian Watkins, thank you both for joining us tonight.